In Case You Missed It with Khristina Williams is an iHeart Women's Sports production in partnership with Deep Blue Sports and Entertainment. Welcome to another episode of In Case You Missed It with Khristina Williams here on the iHeart Women's Sports Network. And in case you missed it, gang, it's Fan Out Friday. So, we only bring the most elite guests to the show every single Friday. And I'm incredibly excited about today's guest because we've known each other for such a long time. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But I truly respect this person's work. I feel like the work that this person does within the sports space in general is super necessary, and I'm excited so that you all can hear their story. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest this week, and we're going to go behind the lens with our guest this week. Please welcome Bri Lewerke to the show. Bri, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for such a kind introduction. This feels like way overdue to be on your show with you, but I'm super, super pumped to be here and make it happen.
So, Bri, we like to start every single episode with our guest sharing a win of the week. And that win could be something personal, something to do with your career. But what was a win for you this week?
Oh man, a win this week. I got to attend a WNBA Fever game as a fan, so I'll call that a win because I feel like it allowed me to have a different perspective about not only like watching the game, but the fan experience. I think you can take for granted a little bit the thing that you get to do night in and night out in terms of photographing and being in proximity to the team in the game. But when I sat in the stands with a lot of other younger children or diehard WNBA fans, you get to really see how much they appreciate the moment and how excited they are. And I feel like that reinvigorated me a little bit as to what I do and how lucky I am to be in these spaces. So I will call my win of the week the chance to be a fan.
I love that. You kind of had like a night off situation. I would say a win for me this week. So I got back to New York. I was in Dallas for a little bit, and the weather, it felt like a fall. Like, you know how when the seasons are about to change and you get that false fall kind of situation going? And so I got off the plane. I was like, what is going on here in New York City? But I am all for fall and winter. So I was pumped and ready to like put my summer clothes in storage and bring my winter and fall clothes out. But now it's hot again. But for those first few couple of days that I was back, I was like, man, I've truly missed it. And I started seeing people on the timeline getting their pumpkin spice. And I'm like, no, it's too early for pumpkin spice. But I could do with a little breeze here and there in New York. It was like sweater weather. And I was loving it. So that was a win. The weather, I guess, was a win for me this week. Bri, I want to dive right into the conversation. So we met a couple years ago at Spotify. You worked on my show, which was Women's Sports Wednesday. And we kind of remained tight ever since. But I want to know, what was your first introduction to women's basketball?
Well, women's basketball specifically was 2018 WNBA All-Star. For photography specifically, my journey started in 2016. Basically just started with an inexpensive camera around Nike EYBL boys basketball, but I realized really quickly that representation in sports media matters, and specifically women's sports. They, in particular, have been, or at the time, were very overlooked historically, and I saw opportunity to help change that through my camera and my lens. And when I did photography for WNBA All-Star in 2018 with WNBA photos, basically, and after a couple years of being more around like the boys and men's side of sports, I instantly fell in love with the women's side. I think being able to document the rise of women's basketball and contribute to how these stories have been told was just meaningful instantly. And specifically being around women was just better. Like, they were just kinder. It was fun to be around those players at the time, and then the women around the women, like you, like the women in media. And so, yeah, 2018 WNBA All-Star, and really ever since then, I've been more on the women's side.
I feel like 2018 was like the golden era of, or really it just laid the blueprint out for what we see today and women's basketball coverage specifically. I mean, I was just getting started in the WNBA space in 2018, but so many of our peers, Camille, Ari, Made for the W, all those different outlets was building the foundation of what we see in the digital space in terms of coverage, whether it was photography, content, lifestyle, writing. I feel like that was a very special year for women's basketball. And so it's interesting to hear your perspective of where you were in 2018 in your journey and how All Star was, your intro into the women's basketball space. You talk about the differences between covering men's sports versus women's sports and how the W has been a little bit more inviting in a way. When you think about your journey through photography and being in a male dominated space, how have you been able to have longevity in this particular field?
That's a great question. I think as a woman in sports photography, especially early on, you have to prove your credibility in a space where men are just often the default. That is the case for sports photography, certainly. Men, and specifically white men, have just kind of always been the default in this space, and access and opportunities and simple acknowledgments at the time felt like barriers that aren't as easily placed in front of men as they are women. And I think for longevity specifically, it was telling stories, being intentional about the way that I capture athletes, especially women, and they ultimately, like, shaped my creative approach. I feel like I came in the space as a woman, and I was like, I know how I didn't play college sports, but I played high school sports, and I remember how I liked my stories to be told as a woman athlete, and I just tried to approach it that way. I didn't just document the game. I tried to showcase, like, the power and the emotion and, like, the depth and that these women have, their mothers, their personalities, their brands now. And so I think just being a woman has, like, fueled my passion for telling these stories that deserve more visibility. And I think that has in turn given me credibility in this space and longevity. But it wasn't easy at first, because, like I said, women are certainly not the default in this space. And it's been interesting to navigate, but it's been so encouraging to see how much growing in terms of media in general, but sports photography as well.
Yeah, you hit on a few different touch points. We're going to start with you saying that you played sports in high school. What sport did you play in high school? And how do you think just playing sports in your youth impacted, how you approached your career?
Yeah, in high school, I played basketball, softball, and volleyball. Basketball was definitely my favorite. And I think sports are so centered around community. I think when I left for college in itself is still a community, even if you don't play sports. But I just think I instantly missed the community and the friendships of what sports brings. And I'm sure many college athletes feel the same way who don't go on to play professionally in any way. It's just you lack this sense of, like, belonging and community. And I found that instantly once I started working in sports. I did an internship with the Washington Wizards NBA team when I was in college in 2015. And I knew in that moment that I wanted to stay in sports. I didn't know what it looked like, but I felt that community, like I was back playing again. It's you share passion, you share what you come to work for every day. You share the same drive to tell stories and bring more people into this community that you know and that you love. And so I think high school sports really just shaped, I mean, so many things, to be honest, like friendships and long-lasting relationships and how I approach work, but really community, I would say, is the center of that.
Yeah, and another thing you touched on was something that's incredibly important to anyone who wants to start a career in sports. But you mentioned the word access and credibility and how you were persistent and consistent in the work that you were doing to be able to, you know, gain both. So, in terms of the access part of it, you talked about community and building community, but what part of the job is about relationship building?
Oh man, it's a huge part. I mean, you and I are an example of that. You have always, looked out for me and given opportunities when you have them, and I hope you feel the same, because I think when you meet especially other women in this space, you want to push them further. It's This space is one that we can all win in, and we can all share opportunities and connections, and I think that it's such a cliche phrase, but it is who you know sometimes, as much as, like, you can, be educated and informed and have college degrees or experience, it really is about the people that you meet along the way, and so, I think specifically pushing women forward in this space is something I'm really passionate about, because I've had women like you that I've met along the way who have essentially brought my name up in rooms that I'm not in, or vouched for me for jobs, or just given me opportunities that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't known the women in these spaces. And the same goes for men or other people that I've met in women's sports. I think we all really try to look out for each other and empower each other, because, especially like you said, I love that you call it the golden era of 2018. I feel like that group of us have really been here for so many years and really value all of the work and the dedication that we've put into women's sports, and we all really value each other and the value that we bring. And so I think it's just really about nourishing and pouring into other people and the relationships that you make in this space, because it can really open up doors and opportunities still to this day for me.
Yeah, I mean, I know new W fans, they have no idea what it was like in the early days to try to be able to cover the league as media, as photographers. You really had to separate yourself and carve out your own niche at that time. And because there wasn't companies or media companies pouring in the dollars, right? You sort of had to take a risk and build something for yourself on your own and then hope that it'll pay off, years down the line. And I would have to say it's definitely a good return on investment in terms of, all the sweat equity in the beginning and time spent um, pouring into things that we were passionate about. And it just brightens my heart to see how far we've all come since 2018. But what would you say was that moment that made you feel like you've made it in this space?
Great question. I think uh, I, I'm gonna have to say something associated to Caitlin Clark, because that just feels like a revolutionary shift. At the gosh, it wasn't even, I guess, that long ago. Was the Big Ten tournament for the her senior year, and she won the championship in overtime versus Nebraska. And people already knew and admired Caitlin because the year before of her national championship run, but this everybody knew this was her last year, and she was about to go into the WNBA, so every, moment and tournament and game, especially single elimination, just felt like it had so much weight on it. And when they won the Big Ten championship and I was there photographing, I brought up an idea which was probably still to this day controversial, but I saw her with the trophy and I thought it really resembled the Larry O'Brien trophy that the NBA players hold in terms of what the Big Ten championship trophy looked like. And I didn't come into this day expecting this, but I said, hey, would you want to take like a Kobe like photo? Because as a photographer, you admire all of these like legendary photos that you've seen for years and years. And that one just came to mind. And I said, would you like to recreate that back in the locker room? And she was down to do that. And we took that photo and it kind of went crazy on the internet. And I feel like that's when like I really grew in following, and people started really noticing my work. Like we've mentioned, I've been doing this for quite a few years now, but that felt like a shift and a turning point, both in women's sports in the moment and what Caitlin and all of these other girls have done for the sport, but specifically for me, it felt like a turning point where, oh, people really care about this work that I've been doing in women's sports now, and they see the way that I'm showcasing these women through my camera. And so I would say that was the moment. I would also just say prior to that, capturing Paige Bueckers in high school also felt like a shift. That was something where people were paying attention to a high school women's basketball player. It just felt so, because even Caitlin didn't get the attention that Paige did in high school. And that was so fun because it was like, wow, this is so exciting. People are really interested in the photos that I'm taking of this 17-year-old girl in Hopkins, Minnesota. And so that was like the pre-moment, I would say. And then that Caitlin tournament and Kobe photo was probably when I felt things really start to shift.
Bri, I feel like you were kind of like a historian in some ways for that class of 2020 because of your proximity not only to Paige and Caitlin, but your ability to tell stories through your lens with such emotion. When I look at your photos, I'm like, I feel something, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of intention behind the work that you do. How are you able to find your style? Because I know a lot of photographers, they have different styles when it comes to creating their signature look, I guess I would say. How are you able to find that and channel that?
That's a great question. I think style is important. I do think that there are certain, whether it's the way that they post-process photos or take photos or share photos, there are certain photographers where you can see an image and know where it's came from. And ultimately, that's always my goal. It's a saturated space that I still think can grow, but of course, there are so many sports photographers, so many legendary ones, so many up-and-coming ones, and it's really not always easy to stand out or make your work be recognizable. And so style in terms of the way that I share photos and edit them has been something I try to prioritize and to make it uniquely me. I think my biggest inspiration when I am, capturing women's athletes is just to tell women's stories through a women's lens. Like I mentioned, we've been so underrepresented, and with so many few women in this space, there's always been an opportunity to reframe how women athletes are seen and celebrated. So I try to use specifically my social channels to share photos that sometimes other brands or media outlets might not see the photo and see the same story that I do. An example that comes to mind is Maya Moore's retirement last year when Caitlin was sitting out on the court watching her jersey retirement. Of course, the first story that you think of is Caitlin is here watching Maya's jersey retirement. But when I took the photo, there were so many girls behind Caitlin in her jersey watching. And so it felt like this full circle moment of, someday those little girls behind Caitlin are going to watch Caitlin go through the same thing. And I shared that on my channels, and that's maybe not something that somebody else could have captured. So I always just try to frame things in the way that this is coming from a woman's lens, and it's just being intentional with perspective is what I really try to do, to sum it
I
up.
like that. Being intentional with perspective. You do a very, very great job because I feel like photography, especially when you're trying to catch action in moments, it's so hard. Have you ever felt like you missed a moment or you couldn't quite capture a moment? Do you ever have that when you're covering games or you're following superstars like Caitlin Clark or Paige Bueckers around, trying to capture moments for them?
Yes, there have definitely been moments that I've missed. I have felt really lucky about capturing so many, like a lot of if you think of Caitlin specifically, a lot of her big shots in the NCAA tournament or, beating South Carolina and things like that. I have felt really confident about those moments that I've captured, and I feel lucky in that way. There are really small one-off things. A recent example I can think of was when the Valkyries were in town and I always know that's the Kate and Caitlin game, and people love that story, of course. And I was out talking to Caitlin while she was stretching, and I turned around to go back, and then somebody was like, "Oh, Caitlin, or Kate and Caitlin just like hugged and like had a moment," and I missed it by a few seconds. And it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's okay, but something like that can really bother me sometimes when it's a split second, but that moment is something that makes people feel something. Like you mentioned, like I love that compliment so much if my photos make me feel something. And, even if it's 2 seconds of Kate and Caitlin hugging, that's a moment that Iowa fans feel nostalgic about the time they played together. And, so it's something like that can really bother me. And then there's been so many moments where a referee or somebody has gotten. I remember when Asia Wilson and Kate used to do their like noggin dude before the pregame, like Freddie Fever walked right in front of me when they were about to get that moment, and that was the only time I had to get it. So small things like that, but I do feel like in the big moments, your preparation and understanding of the moment really does help you walk away confident with what you captured, but sometimes you're just unlucky, honestly.
What does your preparation entail? Do you have like a shot list before you go into these events, or is it more so just feeling the emotion of the moment?
Mostly the emotion of the moment when it comes to games. I feel lucky in that regard because a lot of times you don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, you don't know who's going to win, who's going to score the most points. You When it comes to things like the Kate and Caitlin reunions or rivalries or whatever the case, you obviously try to prepare to showcase that story as much as you can through your lens. But outside of that, I just go in and for an example is a few games ago, Shea Petty, who was on a hardship contract for the Fever, hit a three, and I got this really great like bench reaction, and Caitlin was pushing her, and the coaches were so impressed, and things like that you can never plan for. You just have to be ready for. So when it comes to games, there's not a ton of preparation. It's kind of just knowing what you have experience doing and applying that. But when it comes to if I do like a brand shoot with an athlete or shoot their outfits or something like that, I will often have like a mood board or something like that so that I can draw inspiration from that. But I feel lucky with the games because they play and I photograph. I tell people I could never do like portraits or weddings or something where I'm having to really be directing and posing. Like I feel lucky that the athletes just play and I get to capture it. So
One of the things that I've been able to admire that I really don't see, I guess, in this space with other photographers is your relationship with Caitlin and how fun it is. Like you gave her a camera to be able to document some of her own experiences. I thought that was kind of fun. And just how you guys are just so playful and have that very positive relationship that exudes in the work that you do and publish, online. How did that relationship form? I know you talked about the Big Ten tournament, but how did that relationship form? And do you guys have discussions about some of the work um, once it's published, or does she throw out some ideas to you?
yeah, so to answer your first question, I have known about Caitlin since she was in high school. I've known about her for a very long time. She put up 60 points on my former high school. I'm older than her, so I wasn't there, but I knew about her when she put up 60 because I was like, who is this coming into my old high school putting up 60 points? And so I always admired her game. But since I've always been in the women's sports space, I photographed, I think I've done the last 4 or 5 women's Final Fours. And when they made it to the Final Four, I was already going to photograph that for just women's sports. And I was just there and I was so grateful. I grew up a huge Iowa Hawkeye fan. My family's an Iowa Hawkeye fan. And so I was just excited that Iowa made it from like a completely biased standpoint. And I took the photos and she just ended up messaging me on Instagram, like complimenting my photos or something like that. I can't remember what her message was. And we ended up just talking over Instagram and going back and forth and staying in touch like over social media for a while. And then, yeah, we just kind of became friends organically. It was very organic. We would just talk on social or when we would see each other at games. And then we just kind of organically became friends along the way. And obviously, I've just, we've kind of like, she's helped me with access to things and I've helped her get really great photos. And along the way, we formed a friendship, which has been like the most special part of it because I just think she's an incredible human and she is totally playful, a total goofball. And I feel like she keeps me young. She's such a kid. But she loves photos, like, and I love that about her. We definitely talk about like certain photography things. Like, she's not giving me ideas and stuff, but I'll help her like choose photos for certain things or give her ideas on what like photo would look best for this or whatever the case. And yeah, she also loves taking photos. Like, she is actually really good at it. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised because she's good at everything, but she loves taking photos, and I genuinely think there's like something there for her. I don't know. I've been so impressed with the way that she's able to capture images, and she's using some of my cameras in like manual mode for photographers. That's like not an easy thing. You have to like learn specific things about the camera to use it. It's not just like a point and shoot. And yeah, so she's a creative. I joke with her sometimes. I'm like, you're a creative. She'll say she isn't, but she actually has really creative ideas, and that's been really cool to see. There's a lot of like, I think it's Ken Griffey Jr. and there's other former pro athletes now who are picking up cameras and shooting sports, and I just think that's the coolest thing from a creative standpoint. I'm like, get more athletes into this space because I think they would have such a unique perspective. Coming from like the athlete side of things. So yeah, Caitlin is great. I feel really lucky to have the friendship and relationship that I do with her. And I think that definitely translates into the way that I get to, share her story through a photo perspective.
What can't Caitlin do? She's so good at everything. She needs a show where she
I
tries
know.
everything, like Caitlin versus just try everything because she's so good at
Yeah, save
everything.
some for the rest of us.
You're also a team photographer for the Indiana Fever. How fun has it been this season capturing that team?
It's been so fun. It has been such a joy. I'm part-time on their staff, and I get to capture the tunnel entrances with them, which I think has been one of the most fun experiences. I have to be at the game really early for their arrivals, but I get to interact with them and their personality in a way that's very different than who they are on court. And I think that I also try to bring a lot of energy to the tunnels. A lot of times people walk in and it's quiet and they have cameras in their face, and I'm like, "Hey, you look amazing. How are you?" Like, we get to have conversations and just try to bring like some energy upon their arrival. And I think the Indiana Fever team, the players, the staff, everybody in that organization is incredible, and being able to work with them and see, in my opinion, one of the best digital teams in the sports space do what they do has just been such a joy, and I feel really, really lucky to be around them. Like, outside of the work, the people are just amazing. So it's been so much fun, and I feel really grateful.
How fun is Sydney Colson? I mean, I know she's injured now and we wish her a speedy recovery, but she's such a huge personality. And I know that when I see the videos of her walking the tunnel, she's always engaging and just being so fun on the walk in.
Sid is amazing. I have missed her in the tunnels so much. She's come through a couple times, like, on crutches since her injury, and I'm just heartbroken for her with that, but she is just an amazing spirit. I always knew, from her shows and her videos how funny and entertaining she was, and she truly is. Like, she will say the most out-of-pocket stuff, and she will make you laugh harder than you ever have, but she's also one of the most genuine people I've ever met in my life. When she meets people in a room, she comes up and shakes your hand and looks you in the eye and remembers your name. And it doesn't matter how big or how small you are within the organization. She's so intentional to make everyone feel seen. And she's like a warm hug. You can never not feel seen or welcomed or heard around her. And so, outside of how incredibly hilarious she is, she's just one of those like once in a lifetime people that you just want in your life forever. And I hope I get that with Sid, but she is severely missed in the tunnel, as is Sophie. Sophie had crazy energy too. It's just, yeah, it's been tough. Caitlin, the tunnel has dwindled down. We've gotten new people. It's been a ride for the Fever this year, but I feel lucky because they're all such special humans from top to bottom.
How cool was it that your photo of Paige was used by Nike?
That was very cool. That was very unexpected. That was from her game here in Butler actually, in Indianapolis, and I was very not prepared for Nike to reach out and want to use one of the images, but it was a dream come true. Like, you always want your photo to be, shown in some space. I remember when it was probably 2018 timeframe, Overtime made a billboard and used one of my Nike EYBL photos for that. And that was the first moment where I'd had a photo, blown up and showcased in that way. And for this to be on apparel that people can buy, I was completely blown away. And for it to be Paige was even more special. Paige is one of the most amazing humans I've ever known, and she just deserves, all the good things, and has been a great friend to me and helped me with access to things as well. And so for that to be this full circle moment of, she was one of the first women athletes that I captured, and then for that to be on a t-shirt for her draft night was extremely special. And yeah, it still feels surreal. Like, my whole family has the t-shirts, and it just, when my dad was in town in Indianapolis when Paige and the Wings played here, he kept, seeing the shirt, and he's like, I want to tell them that was my daughter's picture. I'm like, Dad, please, just not today. It's okay. But yeah, it was a very cool moment. And yeah, we'll see how many more of those happen, but it's special to be able to capture photos like that have a place, on a t-shirt. I would have never imagined that like 10 years ago. So,
Listen, I have a t-shirt from that night because I attended Paige's draft party, which was a lot of fun. And once I found out
yeah.
you took the photo, I was like, oh, this makes it more special because my friend took this picture. So I have that shirt and I wear it proudly to the gym, working out everywhere outside. I love the shirt. Bri, before we let you get out of here, I'm very interested in knowing who inspired you, whether it be a photographer, someone in close proximity to you, who inspired you on this photography journey, and what do you hope people after you get from the work that you do, or any advice to those who are looking to get into sports photography?
Yeah, I think one of the first women that I ever saw photographing was Cassie Athena, and I think she inspired me because, honestly, I would get mixed up with her all the time in the spaces that I was, because it felt like it was only us two. People would come up and ask if I was Cassie, and I'm like, no, I'm not Cassie. I'm just another blonde with a camera. But she inspired me because of the photos that she would take, the moment she would capture, but also just her relentlessness to be in spaces. Like, she really inspired me to, not let people tell you no, and just continue to find a way to make it into these spaces and places as a woman. She was there photographing even years before I was, when it was really hard for women to get into places. And so she has completely inspired me to, keep pushing and keep being relentless in finding space. And I think that has been an amazing thing that I learned from her early on that helped me get to where I am. And I think what I hope people take from my work is that these women are incredible athletes, but more than that, they're just incredible people. I hope that young athletes see my photos and see themselves in a frame, or I just hope that people think about, like, what they connect with through my photos, whether it's a lifelong fan or someone new to the sport who's drawn in by my storytelling. I just want my photos to spark something universal, whether that's excitement or pride or nostalgia. But sports in general are about a connection. And as a photographer, I just feel like it's my, opportunity to make sure that those moments are felt as much as they are seen. So I hope that's what people take away from me. And then I just hope the next generation, I get so many messages from young girls and photographers who are so young and are wanting to try out photography, and that has completely reinvigorated me. It's just, I can't imagine that 10 or 20 years ago we had this many young girls, or just young people in general, who wanted to be in the women's sports space photographing. And so I think they inspire me, and I hope I can inspire them, that they can be in these spaces and they can tell these stories, and they will do so much better than even I am now. Like, it's only going to keep growing and getting better from here. And I hope that they feel inspired to know that there's a place for them, and there's a place for as many women as we can get in this space. And as much as I inspire them to get there someday, they inspire me to, keep going and be able to continue to share these stories on a wider stage. So I feel very lucky in that way.
Well, Bri, you're certainly leaving the game so much better than when you entered it in 2018. And I'm super proud of you. Like, seriously, I know every time we see each other, we show each other love, but I'm super, super proud of you, your growth, and how you've been able to really separate yourself in this space. And I hope that you know that the work that you're doing is so, so, so necessary. And, I'm excited to see what's next for you.
Thank you, Christina. That seriously means the world. And right back at you. I am so proud of you. You were one of the original people who knew what this moment was going to be, and you deserve to be here times 100. And I think we're all so lucky to have, you in this space and the stories that you've shared and your commitment to this has absolutely elevated the women's game and shown these athletes in such a special way. So we're all very lucky to have you, and I feel very lucky to know you and call you a friend. So thank you
Likewise,
for
that
this.
feeling is so mutual. Well, Bri, I want to thank you for being our guest this Fan Out Friday for In Case You Missed It here on iHeart Women's Sports Network. And y'all, if you are watching this or listening to this, make sure you give Bri a follow across all of her social media, retweet, repost, engage with her work online. And that's going to do it for this week's episode. We'll see you next time. In Case You Missed It with Khristina Williams is an iHeart Women's Sports production in partnership with Deep Blue Sports and Entertainment. You can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.